My name is Gary Cook. I'm from Rowlett, Texas, and I'm a telecom engineer.
My name is Claire Manigault, and I'm from Dallas, Texas, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer for a nonprofit organization.
My name is Carolyn Madrid Bramlett, and I'm a homeschooling mom, and I have my own business teaching essential oils classes, and I'm here in the Dallas area.
We all recently sat on a civil jury together in December of 2016.
The case lasted around 3 weeks, and initially it was, I had some ambivalence about it, about getting selected. But as the case went on, the trial went on, it became interesting, and it was, in the end, a rewarding experience, yes.
Really, when I was asked to be on the jury, I was like, oh no, I don't have 3 weeks to do this. But it really was a good experience, and I'm glad that I did that.
When I was picked to be on the jury, I actually tried to excuse myself with the homeschooling activities of my kids. I explained that I really couldn't be on a trial for 3 weeks, and they denied me my excuse. So I was selected, and in the end I was really pleased with the whole process. I learned a lot, and I would do it again.
It's a little bit like TV, yes.
Some is like TV. Usually on TV, when they say, "Judge, may we approach the bench," they all just come to the bench and quickly it's resolved, but that's not necessarily always the case. They had to leave the courtroom, and sometimes we had to leave the courtroom. But there were important issues they were discussing, so that when they came back, they could then explain to us what was going on.
Because there were 5 defendants in this case, when they left, they approached the bench and went back to talk about it, they all left, and there were, what, 10 people, 10 attorneys.
Eight attorneys.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that was interesting. The level of melodrama was over the top in our case. It was even more dramatic than what I've ever seen on TV.
Right.
Yeah, the fact that we got along so well really did make it an enjoyable experience. We heard stories. The bailiff was telling us stories of previous juries that had gotten in there, and they were arguing before they ever got to deliberations, and could not get along. Whereas we couldn't even relate to that. We got to know each other. We sort of bonded and made friendships that we still have. Part of the reason that we're here today is because we wanted to see each other.
and we had all races, ages,
Mm-hmm.
male and female. It was a real mix. From, I think the youngest was about 32 maybe, to the oldest was, I think he said 67. And we all got along, and we came from very different backgrounds. And that we really didn't, some of it was interesting in learning about people's backgrounds, but it didn't really keep us from being able to talk and to get along. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was, the time passed a lot because we learned about other people, and we learned about the kind of things they do, and it was very interesting from that perspective, and we did get along real well, I think. I do, because we have a better background, we have a more diverse background, people have different perspectives, and it sounds like during deliberation it was shared, and that does add to the quality of the outcome.
Yeah, I think so too. Although I've heard people say that, well, the jury that was selected, I don't know if that person is going to get a fair trial. They didn't pick me because all they selected were, in the example that a friend gave me, is white women, older women were on that trial. So I don't know if the Hispanic guy is going to get a fair trial. And there's a part of me that thinks, well, I don't know. I just don't think that judging people based on their race or what they do or their age is really fair, and that you're necessarily going to get the same answer from those people. So while I think it certainly benefited us, I don't know that, I'm not of the mind that just because you have a jury that's all the same color or background that you're going to get an unfair trial for somebody. There were definitely surprises. There were a couple of individuals that just, as you look around at your fellow jurors and you're thinking, I think they're thinking the same thing I am. And I was surprised by a couple of folks that had dissenting ideas in the beginning. In the end, it was a unanimous vote, but there were definitely things that I went, okay. I didn't think that they would have that perspective, and that's not really even a perspective I had thought about, but okay, that's that's interesting. Definitely something to think about. So, yes.
It makes you think, well, I'm willing to at least think about your perspective, even though I
Right.
don't agree. Let me just think about it.
Let me try that on.
It sort of makes you have a broader mindset.
Yeah.
I agree. I think the collective discussion is a positive, net positive, to come up with a good quality decision. If you don't want to serve on a jury and you're trying to figure out how to get out of it, don't do it, because in the end you will benefit from it, you'll grow, and you will feel good about yourself.
If someone didn't want to serve on a jury, what I would say, which I kept reminding myself, is that I have the privilege of being a citizen of the United States. So I am not asked to do very many things as a citizen. It's obey the laws, vote, pay my taxes, and serve on a jury. So for the privilege of living here and being in a free country and being in a democracy, that's a small price to pay.
It is a privilege, and it's something that I really had not thought about until being selected. And it is. There's a lot that we're contributing through this process.
Well, just to reiterate what Tanya said, because this case was about a nursing home, and then she had someone in her family involved with a nursing home, and so she understood a little more about some of the processes in a nursing home. So I think that helped her quite a bit. For me, I think just how the law works, how it really comes together. I didn't understand all of that. I understand the voir dire process a little better. When we were first there and we had this big packet to fill out in the voir dire process, I thought, wow, this is a little invasive and I don't understand this. But as the trial went on, I could look back and say, I understand why they asked that question. I understand why that was important, because they needed to know if I had a bias one way or the other by the questions they asked.
So yeah, what I learned was a couple of things. One, the jury, and they talked about it here earlier, is the jury selection process, and that it's not really that you're selected for the jury, you're not selected for the jury. And that was interesting how that works.
It was a learning experience. Well, one of the things that I took away from it was that the problem we were debating was a very common problem. It's a very common problem in nursing homes and in medical care, and so that was an interesting thing to be aware of, because, well, and the other thing I wanted to say is that any of us could find ourselves, being a defendant. And that's another, going back to your previous question, that is a really key reason to serve, is because we could be up there and we want good people in the jury.
If I could have the same, I would trust a jury if I could have the same jury that we had. I thought they did a great job of selecting people that were open-minded and could listen.
I have to be honest with you, at times I've even discussed with my father, and we've talked about, well, is the American jury a good jury? And is the British system better? Because I think they don't use jury. And we've kind of debated it and talked, well, are people intelligent enough to do it, or do they care, and are they biased, and awarding people big settlements? But, and that impression, I had that impression, but I have to admit, after serving on jury trials, that I don't have that impression now.
The idea of prejudice and bias, I think we've all heard that, well, if you don't want to get selected, just go in there and say that you're racist, yeah. Which doesn't even make sense, because what they're looking for is, are you prejudiced, are you biased in this context?
Right.
And that's completely different than, are you biased overall?
Against race, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's biased, or what's the other word? Is it prejudice?
Yeah.
Yeah, prejudice or bias.
Yeah.
But there's so many people that think if you go in and just say that you're prejudiced, that you're going to be dismissed. And
right.
Just the way that they explained that made so much more sense. So
it made sense to me. One of the attorneys asked me in the voir dire process, because I raised my hand about something, and he said, well, that's fine, but are you still able to hear these facts and listen to these
right.
facts and judge just these facts?
In the context.
In the context
yeah.
of this case. And I had to say, well, yes, I can. I can, that other I can set aside, because that has nothing to do with the case, and I can do that.
It was a really neat process that they helped each juror that was in sort of an iffy situation to determine, are you the kind of person that can set aside whatever your beliefs are and still, make an unbiased decision. I would be willing to serve again. It's never a good time, as I can imagine, to get selected for a jury trial, especially one that goes long. But it was so interesting most of the time. Even when it was boring and long and drawn out, it was still fascinating just to watch people and watch, just sort of look at the whole, how people think, how people respond, what they're doing, where are they coming from. So in that way, the entire thing was fascinating and a learning experience. So I'd do it again.
I would do it again too. There were things they said that would be in the trial that scared me. They said we'd have to look at some pictures that were unpleasant, and we were hearing about a nursing home experience, and my mother died in a nursing home, so I was thinking it was going to bring up, it wasn't anything like what this case was, but I was thinking it was going to bring up some bad and sad feelings. And so it's made me realize that don't be so scared about some of the things that you hear, that you can get through it. So
I work, as most people do, and so I feel like I wouldn't want to volunteer because, the employer needs us. But on the other hand, I feel like the government or the community needs us, and so I think, and like I said before, when you walk away after serving, you will feel better. You will feel good about yourself in doing that.